What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's playoff time, so I'm sure most of you guys aren't going to need this video, so I'm only going to go over the top ads. If you happen to squeak into the playoffs, you need some help for this week. But realistically, no one's on bye, and if you made the playoffs, you probably shouldn't be looking at the waiver wire for who you're going to start. I'll definitely go over quarterback and defense streamers because it's certainly possible that you made it into the playoffs streaming quarterback and streaming defense. I'm not going to go over all of the handcuffs again. If you want to check out that section, look last week. But you should basically be able to figure it out. If you've got a stud running back and they have a handcuff behind them, then it's much better for your bench to be having their handcuff instead of some random other backup, just in case something bad happens. So let's start things off like always with the running back position. And first up, we've got a guy that I've mentioned for well over a month now in Guice. Guice turned 10 carries into 129 yards and 2 touchdowns last week while adding 2 receptions on top of that. He finished as the running back 2 on the week, and he finally looks like the running back we thought he would be last season. Don't expect this sort of performance every week. It was a top 5 matchup, and he still plays for Washington. But like I've said, I expect them to feature him more and more down the stretch, and it's possible that he closes the season with around 15 touches a week, and anyone with his sort of talent, with that sort of opportunity, should not be on the waiver wire. Mostert also looked fantastic on Sunday, carried the ball 19 times for 149 yards and a score, and he also added 2 receptions. His problem is that if the 49ers were to feature him, he'd be a must start every week. Really, any of them. Breida, Coleman, Mostert, any of those guys, if they get featured in this offense, they're a weekly must start. But the problem is that doesn't happen, and Breida is expected back next week. I'd say that Mostert is worth adding in deeper leagues, especially for the off chance that Breida is inactive again. But the most likely scenario is still that Breida comes back and this turns into a 3 running back mess. So you don't need to get overly excited about what you saw from him last week and just adding him everywhere. But I will say, if you're in a deeper league where you really need a running back, if Breida is inactive again, he'll be a nice start. Snell is the last running back we'll go over. 21 and 16 carries over the last 2 weeks, and he gets a matchup with the Cardinals this week. As of right now, we don't know the status of James Conner. If Conner misses, then Snell is worth adding. If he's active, then it's a much more difficult situation. I think that Snell is worth the add for the upside if Conner is out. And even if your running backs are good enough to where you won't start him, then I do think he's still worth adding just to block your league mates from getting him. Let's move on to wide receiver, and we'll start things off with Anthony Miller. Now, Miller has target counts of 11, 9, and 13 over the last 3 weeks, and anyone getting that sort of volume should be owned in well over 80% of leagues, not the 10% that Miller is. Remember how excited we were about his talent this summer and really coming out of the draft last season, and how disappointing it was when he was injured before the start of this season. Well, he's fully healthy now, and they're finally using him in the offense. So even though he has a tough matchup with Dallas, he should be a guy you're going after this week because, like I said, anyone getting in this 10 to 12 target range needs to be owned. Pascal is also a great add. His viability definitely depends on the health of T.Y. Hilton, but he was a great play last week with Ebron, Hilton, and Campbell all out. And if that happens again this week while they're playing Tampa Bay, then this kid will need to be started everywhere. I don't know if all of them are going to be out. Obviously, we know Ebron is going to be out, but I don't know at this point if Hilton and Campbell will be out. But even if just one of them remains out, he's going to be a really nice start in that matchup, so I'd definitely be going after him. And then I'd absolutely be going after Robby Anderson. He has 15 targets over his last 2 weeks, and he's the team leader in air yards by a mile over the last month. If he's going to stay even close to as involved as he's been against Miami, then he needs to be considered as a high upside wide receiver 2 this week. And yet he's available in over 50% of leagues. So an absolutely amazing guy to just pick up, put him into your flex spot this week. Even if you've got a decent option, I really think he's viable in the flex as a super high upside piece to get you into the second round of the playoffs. Let's move on to tight end, where we have a few great options this week. We've got Tyler Higbee. Now, Higbee was the most obvious play in the world last week when Everett was out playing the Cardinals. So even though he doesn't get to play the Cardinals again until week 17, and where most people had their championship in week 16, he should still be added, because if Everett is out again, then Higbee will be a tight end 1 again next week when they play the Seahawks, another great matchup for tight ends. If Everett does come back, then I don't really think you should be relying on Higbee, but I think you should add him for that upside. I would also definitely add Jack Doyle. He is somehow less than 50% owned. With Ebron out, he's an every down tight end with a massive red zone role and is easily a tight end 1 for the rest of the season, especially next week against the Bucs. We know that Jacoby Brissett likes to target his tight ends, and we know that the Bucs cannot play pass defense. Mike Gesicki is the last tight end I'll talk about. He's also a great add. I'll say that I would not play him against the Jets this week. They have a very, very bad pass defense, but they're pretty good at stopping tight ends. He's got at least 6 targets in 5 consecutive weeks, and he's got a decent red zone role. So could he do good against the Jets? Certainly possible. Will he do good? I'd say that's a little bit less likely to happen, but he does have matchups against the Giants and the Bengals in weeks 15 and 16. So you can add him, keep him on the bench, and play him in those weeks. All right, let's move on to quarterback streamers, and we've got a few really nice options there this week as well. I would say the clear top option at quarterback this week is Sam Darnold. Basically everyone that plays Miami throws for 300 yards and multiple scores, especially since they've actually been able to produce solid numbers on offense late this season. Devonta Parker and Mike Gesicki have been really good, and Ryan Fitzpatrick has been able to push the ball downfield. So instead of getting absolutely dominated in the first half and teams running the ball, well, they're able to put up into the mid-20s, into 30 points. That's going to cause opposing offenses to have to throw the football. And if that happens again this week, Sam Darnold has massive upside. So if he's still available, I would use him. My next best option would be Kirk Cousins versus Detroit. Detroit has been garbage on defense, so the Vikings should be able to do whatever they want. Cousins had 338 yards and 4 touchdowns the last time these two teams played, and since then, the Lions have allowed Daniel Jones to throw for 322 and 4 scores, Derek Carr to throw for 289 and 2 scores, Trubisky went for 173 and 3 and then 338 and 3 on Thanksgiving. They allowed Dak Prescott 444 yards and 3 touchdowns. The only quarterback to not go off against them is Dwayne Haskins. So I expect Cousins to have yet another big day, assuming that he doesn't get hurt in the Monday night game. Jacoby Brissett is also a really nice streaming option playing at Tampa Bay. Apparently everyone except for Nick Foles goes off against the Bucs defense. Brissett doesn't have a fully healthy supporting cast, as we went over when we talked about Zach Pascal, but that's just the reason he's not first on this list. That's why he gets third. He does still have enough weapons to post a solid stat line, especially when you add in his ability to score rushing touchdowns. He's not a super mobile quarterback or anything, but he will definitely run the ball in, and those scores are obviously worth more. I would have him clearly behind Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins, so I would target those guys first, but he is more than viable this week. For defense streamers, remember we're typically looking for home favorites, and preferably for those home favorites to have aggressive defenses. The top option this week is the Packers. They get a home matchup with Washington. They apply enough pressure, and they have a decent enough secondary to cause problems for Haskins, and they're only 24% owned, so most of you should be adding them if you're streaming. You could also add the Browns at home against the Bengals. The Bengals have a better offense than Washington, so I would still prefer to add the Packers, and I don't think the Browns have a much better defense than the Packers. I think it's pretty comparable, but this is still a spot where the Browns could absolutely pile up sacks against a really bad Bengals offensive line, so I do like that spot. If you can't get the Packers, you can't get the Browns, then I would add the Colts. They're not home. They play at Tampa Bay, but you never know when bad Jameis is going to appear, so there's absolutely a chance that they can get multiple interceptions, multiple sacks, maybe a pick six. But again, I would prefer the Packers and the Browns ahead of them. All right, let's order these guys for waiver priority. So the order for claiming players, and I'm going to say claiming players, but at this point, I don't think you need to be waiting for waivers to clear and then adding players. Just use your claims. It's almost over. Just get the guys you want and make sure you win this week. So the order for claiming players is Higbee or Doyle if you need a tight end, or if your opponent needs a tight end and you want to block them, then Robby Anderson, then Benny Snell, Anthony Miller, your quarterback streamer if you need one, your defense streamer if you need one, Zach Pascal, Darius Guice, Raheem Mostert, and Mike Gesicki. So that'll do it for the Week 14 waiver wire video. Remember, if someone does get hurt in the Monday night game, then just look at the pinned comment for any sort of update. I'll be doing start and sit for the running back position tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that one. But that's the end of this video. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.